The hum of jet engines filled the cabin. A luxury plane, high above the clouds, filled with strangers from around the world. And in the middle of that flight sat a little girl, the daughter of a billionaire. But don't let the title fool you. She wasn't stat spoiled. She wasn't stat arrogant. She was just a child, carrying the invisible weight of her father's money, her family's legacy, and the cruel eyes of a world that never let her forget who she was. On that flight, she made one small, ordinary decision. A decision every child makes. She stood up to use the bathroom. Simple. Normal. Innocent. But what happened next? A hand shot out. A voice sliced the air. A humiliation so deep that even 30,000 feet above the earth, it dragged her down into the shadows. And when her own father, her protector, her blood, chose a stranger's son over her, her world shattered. Family. If you've ever felt overlooked, silenced, or told you didn't matter when you knew you did, this story is for you. Stay with me. And don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a mirror. Her name was Amara Velasco. 10 years old. Dark eyes, framed with lashes, too heavy for her face. Braided hair that carried the weight of her heritage. And a silence that was louder than any child's laughter should ever be. She was the daughter of Don Alejandro Velasco, a billionaire so powerful that men twice his age lowered their eyes in his presence. Hotels, banks, skyscrapers, all carried his name. But when Amara whispered "Papa," his eyes stayed cold. At home, she lived in a palace of gold and glass. Chandeliers glittered above her, marble floors stretched beneath her small feet, and servants moved silently through the halls. But inside it was empty. Her father gave her everything money could buy. Diamonds, dresses, tutors, vacations. Everything except love. At the dinner table, when Amara laughed too loudly at a maid's joke, her father's gaze silenced her. When she dared to dream out loud, "Papa, maybe I'll be an artist one day," he snapped his newspaper and muttered, "Artists don't build empires. Discipline does." And so, Amara learned early, she wasn't his daughter. She was his reflection, a symbol, a piece of glass he could polish or hide, depending on what suited his empire. But even in silence, children dream. Amara dreamed of being normal, of running barefoot through grass without bodyguards, of eating ice cream without cameras flashing, of using the bathroom on an airplane without anyone noticing. That day, flying from Madrid to New York in the private wing of a luxury airline, she thought maybe, just maybe, she could do something on her own. The cabin was crowded. Businessmen with laptops, influencers with ring lights, mothers with children who spilled juice on the carpets. Amara pressed her hand against the window, watching clouds drift like torn cotton across the endless sky. And then, her stomach tightened. Her heart skipped. She needed to use the bathroom. Her very first time on a plane. It wasn't just about the bathroom. It was about courage. The airplane hummed with the low growl of engines. Passengers shifted restlessly in their seats. Babies cried, and the metallic smell of recycled air clung to the cabin. Amara shifted nervously in her seat, glancing at the glowing sign above her, "Restroom vacant." She whispered softly, "Amara, Papa, may I go to the bathroom?" Her father didn't even look up from his newspaper. He flicked the page sharply, his jaw tight. "Father, fine. Go. Don't stay too long. And remember, don't stay cause a scene." She nodded, her heart racing. For her, it wasn't just a bathroom. It was her first time flying internationally. Her first time stepping into that narrow silver door everyone else seemed to walk into so casually. She walked down the aisle, feeling the weight of every eye on her. Just as her fingers reached for the handle, a manicured hand shot out. A woman, tall and pale-skinned with pearl earrings that glittered under the fluorescent lights, blocked her way. Her son, about Amara's age, smirked at her side. "Woman, excuse me, My son needs to use it first. Amara blinked. Startled, she managed to whisper, Amara. But I was here before him. The woman raised an eyebrow, her lips curling. Woman, are you really arguing with me? Step aside. Her son leaned in, his voice dripping with arrogance. Boy, move. My mom said I go first. What are you, stupid? The words hit Amara like a slap. Her chest tightened. She turned slightly, glancing back at her father. Maybe he would stand up for her. Maybe, finally, he'd protect her. Her father had risen from his seat, his eyes burning with quiet rage. For a brief second, Amara Sep's heart leapt. Who Sep's going to defend me? But then, father. Then, let her son go first. Silence. Passengers gasped. The words cut deeper than a knife, deeper than betrayal. Amara Sep's lips trembled. Amara. Papa. But her father didn't even look at her. His cold eyes told her everything. You are an embarrassment. The boy shoved past her shoulder, deliberately bumping her. Boy. Told you. You don't set matter. The bathroom door slammed shut behind him. Tears welled up in Amara's eyes. Her world shattered. The betrayal didn't come from strangers. It came from her own blood. Passengers whispered. Some shook their heads. Others looked away too uncomfortable to intervene. Her father leaned down, his whisper razor-sharp. Father, never embarrass me in public again. Do you understand? Her breath caught. She wanted to scream, to fight back, to tell him how much it hurt, but her voice betrayed her. Amara. Yes, Papa. Her small voice cracked, the syllables breaking her own heart. She stood frozen in the aisle, every part of her trembling, while the boy emerged from the bathroom smirking, victorious. The woman smiled in triumph, her hand resting proudly on her son's shoulder. And Amara? She returned to her seat quietly, her face wet with silent tears, carrying the weight of a betrayal no child should ever know. Amara slipped into her seat quietly, her tears burning like fire against her cheeks. She tried to look down, tried to disappear, but the whispers around her grew louder. Passenger. Did you see that? He made his own daughter step aside. Wife. Shameful. I would never, never let my child go through that. The words stung, echoing in Amara's ears. She curled into herself, wishing she could vanish. But the humiliation wasn't done yet. The boy emerged from the bathroom, a smug grin plastered on his face. He stopped in the aisle, staring directly at Amara. Boy, better luck next time, crybaby. A couple of passengers gasped, others frowned. Amara's father's jaw tightened. He stood up suddenly, his presence towering over the aisle. For a second, Amara thought, finally he will defend me. But no. Father, sit up straight. Stop crying. You sap embarrassing me even more. Gasps rippled through the cabin. One man, seated a few rows back, couldn't hold his tongue. Passenger. Excuse me, sir, but your daughter did nothing wrong. That woman cut in line. We all saw it. The father turned slowly, his eyes like steel. Father, this is none of your concern. Mind your own business. Passenger. When a child is humiliated, it is everyone's concern. Murmurs of agreement spread. Heads nodded. Even a flight attendant nearby froze, unsure what to do. The woman, the white woman who had blocked Amara, spoke up, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Woman. Oh, please. Don't turn this into something at stake as, not. My son is a child. He needed the bathroom, urgently. Surely, this girl could wait. Passenger. She was already at the door. We saw it. Your son shoved her. That's Sep's bullying. The boy rolled his eyes, crossing his arms. Boy, you all are just jealous. Laughter, bitter, disbelieving, erupted from a few passengers, but Amara's father slammed his hand on the armrest, his voice booming. Father, enough. This discussion is over. My daughter will not cry, will not complain, and will not make a scene. Do you hear me? Amara flinched. His voice was like thunder, shaking her to her core. Passenger. What kind of man yells at his own child for being mistreated? Passenger. Sweetheart, you did nothing wrong. Tears rolled down Amara's cheeks again, but she wiped them quickly, terrified of her father's glare. The argument grew hotter, voices overlapping, anger rising like a storm inside the cramped cabin. Woman. This is ridiculous. Are you all seriously defending her? Sep's not even. She stopped herself, biting her tongue, but the passengers caught it. A dangerous silence filled the air. Passenger. Finish your sentence. Go on. Not even what? The woman froze, her face reddening. She looked away, clutching her son's arm. Amara's heart pounded. She could feel the world spinning around her. The fight, the shame, the betrayal. Everyone was speaking for her, except the one person who mattered most. Her father. He leaned toward her, his whisper sharp as a knife. Father. If you ever cry in front of strangers again, you still regret it. Amara swallowed hard, her voice breaking as she whispered back. Amara. Yes, Papa. The murmurs grew louder, passengers shaking their heads in disbelief. Some looked at Amara with pity, others with quiet anger. And for the rest of that flight, the aisle between rows 14 and 15 carried not just footsteps, but the weight of betrayal, judgment, and the sound of a little girl's heart breaking. The plane touched down hours later, but for Amara, time had stopped somewhere between the bathroom door slamming and her father's cold whisper. She walked through the airport like a ghost, clutching her tiny backpack, her head bowed. Her father strode ahead, untouched, unaffected, while the passengers who had witnessed everything exchanged glances of pity and anger. Some wanted to stop her, to say something comforting, but she disappeared behind her father's long shadow before anyone could. That night, Amara lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The words replayed in her mind like broken glass. Never embarrass me in public again. Do you understand? Her small fists clenched under the blanket. For the first time, a question she had never dared to ask whispered through her heart. Why am I always the one who has to stay quiet? Tears welled up again, but this time, she didn't let them fall. This time, she swallowed them back, letting something else grow inside her instead. Not despair, not fear, but a spark. Days passed. Her father went about his billionaire life, meetings, galas, charity dinners that were more about image than kindness. But Amara began to notice something. Everywhere they went, people treated her differently after that flight. Some with pity, some with quiet respect. And every time someone whispered, "That's the little girl from the plane," her father's jaw tightened. He wanted the world to forget. But Amara didn't. She began to write. In a small leather notebook her aunt had once given her. Amara scribbled her pain into words. She wrote about injustice, about being silenced, about that bathroom door that had slammed in her face, and about the fire it had lit in her soul. Weeks later, the miracle happened. Her father was hosting one of the grandest functions of the year. Chandeliers dripped with crystal light, music swirled through the ballroom, and the city's elite gathered in glittering gowns and pressed tuxedos. And among the crowd, uninvited but daring, stood them. The woman from the airplane. And her son. They had been invited by a mutual acquaintance, unaware of whose event it was. But when Amara's eyes locked on theirs, time stopped. Her father was mid-speech, charming investors with his polished smile, when the whispers began. Is that the same woman from the flight? The one who humiliated his daughter? Amara's heart pounded. This was it. The moment she had been waiting for, though she hadn't even known it. She stood. Her small frame seemed to glow under the chandelier's light. Amara. Everyone here should know. This woman stopped me from using a bathroom on a flight. She told me her son was more important than me, and my own father let her. The ballroom fell silent. Her father's face froze, his billionaire mask cracking. The woman's cheeks flamed red, her son shifting uncomfortably. Woman. That's not true. Amara. It is true, and I step not afraid to say it anymore. Gasps filled the room. Reporters' cameras flashed. The whispers roared into a storm. Her father rose quickly, his face hard. He turned to the woman and her son. "Father, get them out of my sight, now." The woman tried to protest, but it was too late. Security escorted them out, the crowd watching with judgmental eyes. For once, the woman wasn't smiling. For once, her son was steady smug. They looked small, weak, ashamed. And then, every eye turned to Amara. She stood on the stage beside her father, trembling but refusing to back down. She took the microphone. "Amara, I may be young, I may be small, but no one has the right to treat me, or any child, like I don't. Spat matter. Every child matters, and I will never stay silent again." The ballroom erupted in applause. Not polite claps, but thunderous, heartfelt applause that shook the chandeliers. Her father stood frozen, caught between shame and pride, his own daughter stealing the spotlight. And Amara, for the first time in her life, felt something she had never felt before. Power. The applause thundered through the ballroom, echoing like a storm. Amara stood there, chest rising and falling, her small hand still gripping the microphone. For a moment, the billionaire father just stared at her. His carefully constructed world, his image, his control, had slipped through his fingers in front of the very people whose approval he lived for. But it wasn't about him anymore. It was about her. News outlets exploded the very next day. Headlines blared across the country. Billionaire Sepp's daughter calls out injustice at gala. Small girl, big voice. Amara Sepp's courage shakes the elite. Clips of her trembling but fearless words went viral. Social media crowned her the voice of the silenced and #spread, #let her speak, and #every child matters. And while the world celebrated her bravery, the woman and her son, once smug and arrogant, were drowning in public backlash. Strangers flooded their social media with outrage. "How dare you treat a child that way? Shame on you for teaching your son cruelty." They issued an apology, but it was too late. Their reputations crumbled. Invitations dried up. Their so-called friends vanished. Behind closed doors, the billionaire father confronted Amara. His voice was sharp, his pride wounded. "Father, you humiliated me. Do you realize the damage you have done?" Amara looked at him, no longer trembling, no longer silent. "Amara, no, Papa, I didn't humiliate you. You did that to yourself when you chose strangers over me." Silence. The words hit harder than any headline. For the first time, her father had no answer. Soon, business partners began to ask questions. If he can protect his own daughter, how can we trust him to lead? Is this the kind of man we want to associate with? His image, the very foundation of his empire, was crumbling. And the bitter irony, the only person who could restore it was Amara. Weeks later, another grand function arrived. This time, Amara's father invited her onto the stage, not as an accessory, not as a child in the background, but as the guest of honor. He introduced her to the crowd, voice trembling with something that almost sounded like humility. "Father, this is my daughter, Amara, the bravest person I know. She taught me a lesson I should never have needed to learn." Amara stepped up, her small figure radiant under the lights. She spoke again, calm, steady, and full of truth. "Amara, we live in a world where some people think money, status, or power makes them more important. But I learned something else. Courage is stronger than cruelty, and truth is louder than silence. Family, no one can make you small, unless you let them." The applause was deafening. The fall of the antagonists. The woman and her son. They tried to slip into another elite event, weeks later, desperate to reclaim their standing. But when people recognized them, whispers spread like fire. "That's Sepp's the woman who bullied the little girl. That's Sepp's her son, the one who said she didn't matter." They left in shame, never regaining their place in society. Poetic justice had done its work. Amara didn't just rise. She soared. She became a symbol for children everywhere. Schools invited her to speak. Parents showed her videos to their kids, teaching them about courage and kindness. And her father, still proud, still powerful, was no longer the star of the story. His daughter was the same little girl who had once been silenced in an airplane aisle. Now had the world listening. Family, let me ask you, if you were Amara's father, would you feel shame or pride? And if you were Amara, would you forgive or never forget? Comment below, because I want to hear your heart. Sometimes the smallest voices shake the tallest towers. And sometimes, the ones the world tries to silence are the ones destined to be heard the loudest. So never let anyone tell you that you don't matter. Because you do. Family, if Amara's courage touched you today, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it.